Madras Diabetes Research Foundation, and Dr. V. Mohan, Chairman, Madras Diabetes Research Foundation. To set the context and give us an overview, I would like to invite our Chairman, Dr. V. Mohan, to deliver the welcome address.
The history of metabolic NCDs, including diabetes in this country, because for the first time we are going to release the metabolic health NCD health report of the whole country. I don't think such a thing has ever been attempted, and I'm very happy to present the results to you shortly. Let me take this opportunity to welcome Dr. R.S. Dhaliwal, Scientist G and head of the NCD division of the Indian Council of Medical Research. They come all the way from Delhi for this event. Dr. Tanvir Kaur, who looks after the diabetes division of the NCD, Scientist G at the Indian Council of Medical Research. Both of them have been associated with this project and believe it or not, actually took us 15 years to complete the whole country. But now it's finally done, barring a few union territories and a few islands which are now currently going on and about to be completed. But the whole mainland has now been, all the states in the country have been completed. I'd also like to welcome my good friend and colleague, Professor Ashok Kumar Das, who is the chairman of the expert committee of the ICMR for the ICMR-INDIAB study. He has been very much part of the study from the beginning, from the last 15 years. And he has also, along with Dr. Dhaliwal and Dr. Tanvir Kaur, visited almost every state where this study is going, where the study took place. Dr. Anjana is on the dais, and all of my colleagues from MDRF, a big welcome to you. A very special welcome to all the state PIs. We have 31 states, and all the state PIs are there in the Zoom call. It's very nice of them to all have joined for this momentous occasion when the final results of the ICMR-INDIAB study is going to be released. And very, very big warm welcome and thank you to all the PIs who are joined virtually. The press and media, this is a press event, and we want to present all the results of India's NCD health burden to the press and media. A lot of you I know have come in person, and an equal number have joined virtually from different parts of the country. We have people from the press and media in Delhi, Mumbai, Pune, and many other, Bangalore, and many other cities who are actually on this call, who are on this Zoom call. So it's a very momentous occasion. I'll just take 5 minutes to explain to you what the study is all about so that we all come on the same page. And then after that I'll request Dr. Ashok Kumar Das to say a few words, and if Dr. Dhaliwal and Dr. Tanvir Kaur want to say something, they can do that. And then we'll go to the main presentation by Dr. Anjana, where she'll present all the details. There's some startling results to present to you. And many of you might be seeing this for the first time, including because the paper was published literally this morning, at 5 o'clock this morning. It was published in Lancet Diabetes, so it's hot off the press, as you can say. And so let me start by talking a little bit about this ICMR-India diabetes study, or INDIAB study, which is funded by the Indian Council of Medical Research and the Department of Health Research. Now, you may say, why do such a big study all over India? Now this is, I'm taking you back to 2008 when we started the INDIAB study. These were some of the studies which were there in the literature. And if you see, 1972, 50 years ago, ICMR did a study of a multi-center study in India. Now you may say, what is the difference between that study and INDIAB? There's no comparison. Because when Ahuja did this study in 1972, only 6 cities were studied. 6 cities all over India, and 1 village near those 6 cities. Of course, 50 years ago, that is a huge achievement to have thought of that, the vision of doing a multi-center study, which Professor Ahuja did. But that is the only big ICMR study on a national level which was done 50 years ago. The difference between that study and this study is that Professor Ahuja selected 6 cities in Kerala, every state, in India, top to bottom, east to west, north to south. We've picked every part of the state to do it. So that is one difference. Also, if you see, even by 2008, you see the urban prevalence slowly going up. Now these are all mostly cities. You'll say Chennai, and all that coming up there quite often. And in rural areas, we believe that the prevalence of diabetes is very low at that time. So what we did was, we said that there is no national data since that 1972 ICMR study, and the NUD study focused only on metro, the study which was done by Dr. Ramchandran. It studied only the big metros in India, Delhi, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai and so on, Mumbai and so on. And then there was another study done by called the ODIS study, which left out all the metros and looked at only small towns and villages. So there's no study which has actually done the whole thing, everything together, cities, small cities, 2-tier, second, third tier, and villages and so on. And all those studies only reported on diabetes. There's no data on pre-diabetes. It's very important because pre-diabetes only becomes diabetes later. Okay? So that was how in 2008, when we presented to ICMR and said, why don't we do a national study? And that is how the ICMR-INDIAB study was born. Now, when we proposed this to them, we actually thought we'll do one in north, one in south, one in east, one in west. But ICMR in its wisdom, they said if you do that, it doesn't solve the purpose. You just choose one in the west and say, we'll choose Maharashtra. Then Gujarat will say, no, our data may be different from Maharashtra. If you select Kerala in the south, they'll say, Andhra will say, no, that is different, ours is different from Kerala. So they said it's a state subject. Health is a state subject. If you're doing it, you better do it properly. You do every state in the country. Now that changed the whole equation, because in the whole world, believe it, ladies and gentlemen, in the whole world, no country has attempted it. US has not attempted it. Canada has not attempted it. China has not attempted it. To do the whole country, state by state by state, they all do patchy work. OSDAT studies 6 places in Australia, here, they pick 5-6 places and they do that. Even the Chinese studies, the biggest Chinese study was 40,000 people. That was 5-6 places in China. This is 113,000 people, representative of 1.4 billion people in India. Totally a representative study. Such a study has never been done in the world. And that is how INDIAB addresses all this. Now we have, very lucky to have an ICMR expert group led by Professor Ekedas, who is very much here as a chairperson. Dr. Nikhil Tandon, who is a member who is attending this call, is also the PI for Delhi along with Dr. Madhu. And then we have Dr. Rajesh Kumar, Dr. Mahanta, Dr. Aram Pandey, Dr. Lakshmi. Some of them are probably on this call. And of course, the ICMR Secretariat is Dr. Daliwal and Dr. Kanvirkar, who has been there from the beginning, and both of them are actually in this hall today. And a big thanks to DG ICMR, because every DG ICMR has supported this study and felt it is very, very important. They were able to see how far reaching the results can be, and when we present the results to you a few minutes later, you will agree that their vision was absolutely correct. Now, very briefly, I'm not going to take you through the details. This is a door-to-door cross-section study. So some of you may think, in fact, one of the reviewers who didn't understand this, he said, oh, you went to some hospitals and picked some data. No, we didn't go to any hospital. Oh, some clinician did it. No clinician did it. Clinician was only the PI of the study. We went home to home. The computer picks which village, which house, which street. And then we go there and we only select one person from that house, not everybody from that house. Then you'll get bias. Suppose there are 10 diabetics in that house, you'll get everyone included. So it is a most representative. In fact, it's so representative that if you take the INDIAB curve, the graph, and put it over the census of India, they both exactly match. That is a final proof that we have got a proper representative sample. Okay, so the aim was to find out not just diabetes but also hypertension, dyslipidaemia and so on, which we'll go into. Now we had 29 states, and in each state we had 4,000 people. Now you know that the rural prevalence is much higher in India, almost 60-70% is rural. So we had 2,800 from rural, 1,200 from urban, 4,000 people into all these states, and the total sample size which was estimated was 124,000. Now J&K is just being done now, Jammu and Kashmir, that's why it's 113,000 and not 124,000. When we finish this, it will actually be more than 124,000 people. Now I'm not going to go into this, just to tell you that for those of you who are interested, is it a proper representative sample? Of course it is. The rural, we had villages, 3 levels of stratification. Urban also, we had urban wards, and then we had proper level of stratification. The Indian part of the NFHS, the National Family Health Survey, NFHS sampling. So all that was used, so we didn't have to reinvent the wheel, and that's why the sampling became so good. Now, a big country like India, why did other countries not attempt it? You can ask. Small country like Australia, only 20 million people. Actually, Delhi is bigger than Australia now. Okay, and yet they didn't do the whole of Australia. Why? Very complicated. If you want to do a whole country, it is very complicated. So we knew it's going to be complicated. So we got the funding also in phases. We had phase 1, where the first 4 states were studied. Then we had phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, phase 5. And the Northeast, actually, and we are very happy that Dr. H.K. Das from Assam, the PI of Assam State, is here. He has travelled all the way from Assam to attend this press conference. Give him a big round of applause. Das, he represents the Northeast. And he was the first state done in the Northeast. And he has travelled all the way from Assam to attend the press conference. You can imagine the commitment that people have. So all that was done, and that's the years. Now I'd like to just read out the names of all the PAs because they're all on this call. For Chandigarh, we have Dr. Anil Bansali from PJ Chandigarh. For Jharkhand, we have Dr. Dandania from Ranchi. From Maharashtra, we had Dr. Shashank Joshi, who's on the call. I saw him just now. Dr. Prashant Joshi and Dr. Yajanik. From Tamil Nadu, at that time it was me who was the PI. And Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, believe it or not, it was undivided Andhra at that time. When we started, Andhra had not yet been divided. So it was Dr. P.V. Rao from Nizam Institute, Dr. Ajay Kumar representing Patna, Bihar, Dr. Banshi Sabu representing Ahmedabad and Gujarat, Dr. Prabha Adhikari for Karnataka, she was from the Kasturba Medical College, Mangalore, Dr. Anil Bansali again for Punjab from PGI Chandigarh, Dr. Jampa, these are all the Northeast. So for Arunachal Pradesh, we had Dr. Jampa, for Assam we had Dr. H.K. Das who's here, we had from Manipur, we had Dr. Somarjit, and from Meghalaya, we had Dr. Budna. From Mizoram, we had Dr. Rosangulia. From Nagaland, we had Dr. Vizuli. From Sikkim, we had Dr. Togbe Jikme Chokpe. And then we had from Tripura, we had Taranga Riang. From Delhi, we had Dr. Nikhil Tandon. From Jaipur, Dr. Arvind Gupta. Madhya Pradesh, Dr. Sunil M. Jain. From Uttar Pradesh, Dr. Sarita Bajaj. They're all on this call, I think. From Chhattisgarh, we had Dr. Kalpana Dash. From Goa, we had Dr. Ankush Desai. From Haryana, Dr. Sanjay Kalra. From Kerala, Dr. P.K. Jabbar from the Medical College Trivandrum. From Puducherry, Dr. Anil Jacob Purti. From Himachal Pradesh, we have Dr. Jatinder Kumar Mokta. From Odisha, we have Dr. Siddharth Das. From Naseeb Medical College. From Uttarakhand, we have Dr. Sagar Modi. From West Bengal, we have Dr. Shubhanga Chaudhary, who is on this call right now. So, this is just to give you an idea about how representative it was. Each state had a PI, and that PI was one of the top people in that state, and they chose their team, and they went ahead and selected the whole team from there. The entire team for every state came to MDRF Chennai for training. Why? Because we want to do it in a uniform way. And how long was the training for? 15 days. To do a survey like this, the whole team comes over. 15 days they train how to take blood pressure, how to take things. We had extensive quality checks, and that's what made this study so good and so famous. So I'm going to stop here and over to you.
Before the hearse, Anjana is going to speak everything about it, but I must mention it's a great study. We do not know in how many years it can be done once again. It took, I just now saw, 75 to 50 years to do this study. The second thing I like to mention that in one bird we have killed at least 5 birds. This gives you the ultimate in diabetes. The complications of all these non-communicable diseases are concerned. So in one snapshot we have captured many things. Third point, very important point, the strength of the study is one nation, one health, and one ICMR-INDIAB study which has put us visible in the entire global map of diabetes. I think from today onwards, anything on diabetes will quote, and you will see in a minute what is going to be presented. So it's a great thing that is happening today. We're on this momentous, we call it Deva Muhurta, we call it the hour of God. when a little effort can produce great results and change the destiny of the country. Final two things I'll mention, which is very important to say, that it has been done in the inaccessible areas. We will have a small snippet afterwards. There are areas in the country where our investigators were taken as intruders, and people came with bow and arrow because they didn't know. We have gone to the inaccessible areas in the northeast and many other inaccessible areas, which is very difficult to do, and the study has been completed there. Today ICMR, I am quoting Dhaliwal sir, he told me one day, sir, can I quote you? He said, ICMR is driven by 4 or 5 things, all starting with D. I'll stick to 3 Ds, he told me. Number 1, data. First class, absolutely robust data. Believe me, this ICMR-INDIAB has 100,000 and beyond data sets, which will be analyzed subsequently, and you will find wealth of information, research papers are waiting to be published. So it is driven by robust data, which is innumerable. Number 2 is discovery. The discovery from the ICMR-INDIAB, which will be unfolded before you, you will find that how big is the problem and how we are managing it today. The data regarding the diet, physical activity, told me, I must tell you, it has many deliverables. I'll just allude to 2. One paper, which was published recently, again by Anjana and her group, it says about the micronutrient. It says how a simple change from high carbohydrate or very high carbohydrate content to some other change in diet can prevent diabetes. The other deliverable was, which is to my mind the great, it can say, it can show to the world that how there is a great inertia amongst the persons with diabetes, amongst the general public, and among the physicians to treat diabetes optimally, completely, integrally. Dear friends, I'll close by saying a great thing was achieved. A good beginning has been made through this ICMR-INDIAB study. Today is a momentous, a great day in the history of diabetes research in our country. And we definitely promise to you there is a good beginning, there will be well continuation. As you just now heard Mohan, that all of us, we are not going to stay quiet. We'll take it to the next stage of applying the deliverables to the entire country. And last, there is no endless progression for medical science research in our country under ICMR. Thank you very, very much for your attention.
For committee, say just a couple of sentences. Then Dr. Nikhil Tandon and Dr. Shashank Joshi as PIs of the study also to say a few words. Be very brief, and then we will go ahead with the presentation. First, Dr. Madhu, please. You can unmute, Madhu.
The study is one of the most unique studies in the whole world regarding epidemiology of not only diabetes but any other condition as well. And I think the data generated through the study, through the efforts not only of the NDR, but also all the PIs across the country, with the able support of the expert group, I think has generated unique data which will be remembered for several decades to come, and makes India almost foremost in the field of diabetes epidemiology for all time to come. Thank you, Mohan, for leading such important studies, and I'm sure all of us will learn and contribute in future as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Madhu. Request Dr. Nikhil Tandon to say a few words, and finally Dr. Shashank Joshi on behalf of all the PIs, both of them can say a few words. Shashank, to Nikhil.
Thank you, Dr. Mohan. I'd first like to add my words of congratulations to ICMR and you and the entire team at MDRF. I'd just like to make a couple of comments. I won't intrude onto Anjana's version, but I think the audience, especially colleagues from the press, to specifically focus on is to also look at the granularity of what these studies really report, right? So it's all very well to say that there are X percentage of people with diabetes, but I think we've repeatedly made the claim that we are nations within a nation. We are individual states are the size of, bigger than most European countries. There is a lot of heterogeneity even within the country, and that raises important questions. And I'll just give you a couple of important percentages. and I'm sure Anjana will give you much more. Diabetes prevalence rates varying from as low as 5% to 26%, blood pressure of 20 to 50%. So really, why is it that the same people in the same randomized sampling have such differences? Health is a state subject. I would really want to flag this to the health administrations of the different states to see, focus and decide for themselves how to address the NCD burden within their states, and also for the researchers to come up with thoughts as to why we're seeing such a degree of heterogeneity across a country like ours. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikhil. Finally, before we go on to Dr. Shashank Joshi, representing the west of the country.
So, Om Sai Ram, Dr. Mohan. First of all, congratulations to you and your entire team of MDRF and Dr. Mohan Center and Anjana, the entire team. And I must congratulate that you were able to motivate and ensure that ICMR joined this unique project, which is a flagship project of ICMR. So I must thank ICMR then, and since then they have been persistent and consistent in their support. And I think their support has been enduring, and Dr. Mohan has always delivered. I think Dr. Mohan is one of the foremost scientists on planet Earth in the field of diabetes and internal medicine, according to me, and he has mentored many of us. I would echo exactly what Dr. Madhu and Dr. Nikhil Tandon has said, that this study is, we are 1.4 billion people on planet Earth. We are at par with China in terms of population, out of 8 billion population. And people should learn from the insights delivered by this largest public health study on planet Earth. This is very insightful. I was a part of the original phase 1. I still remember Dr. Mohan painstakingly doing every micro detail. I think I have never seen a scientist of his caliber looking at micro detail of Maharashtra, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand and Tamil Nadu. And we are seeing a unique transition, as Nikhil said, that so much of diversity, and every 100 kilometers the food habits change, lifestyle changes, lingua franca changes in India, and obviously the prevalence and incidence of diabetes also changes. And therefore it's very insightful for us. But we are all here committed for people living with diabetes and pre-diabetes, and we want to make a change. We are in Atmanirbhar Bharat, as they call it, and an Ayushman Bharat, and we really feel that Dr. Mohan, you have led through example and through exemplary work in ensuring that all of us come under one umbrella, serve the nation, and Dr. Mohan, really you lead by example. Om Sai Ram.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
ICMR and a whole lot of people have put their strength and might into this to produce the results that we have today. So let's move on directly to the diabetes burden first. What is the national prevalence of diabetes in India? It is 11.4%. The urban prevalence is 16.4 and rural is 8.9. Now this has been done through OGTTs, which are glucose tolerance test, capillary OGTTs done in about 113,000 individuals. That's 1,13,000 individuals done from nook and corner of the country. However, there are also internationally other methods of diagnosing diabetes. Those are through the A1C and other methods. So we also have prevalences that is done through the A1C criteria, the HbA1c, and a combination of the OGTT and A1C. Now in our country, the best method is the OGTT. Accepted method by the RSSDI and other national guidelines is the OGTT, and hence we have used that method for all estimations of burden calculations. However, if you use the A1C criteria, the prevalence goes up to 13%, and if you combine criteria, we have a combined national prevalence of 21.1%. So globally, these various criteria people look at. Now shown here are maps of the country. So this is urban India, this is rural India, and this is overall together. So here we have color-coded maps. Up to 5% prevalence is shown in green, and up to 7.4 is in yellow, up to about 10 is in orange, and above 10 becomes red. So if you look at urban India, this is diabetes prevalence. Almost the whole country is showing high prevalence of diabetes. This is urban India. If you go to rural, there's more heterogeneity. you'll see that higher prevalence in mostly in the south, some parts of the north as well, with lower prevalence in the east and some of the central parts of India. Now if you combine that, look at the prevalence, diabetes prevalence highest in the south, all the south states are in red, and of course we have Punjab, Uttarakhand, Delhi, etc. also in red with yellows here. So this is the diabetes prevalence. If you want a state-wise prevalence here, it goes from the lowest here 4.8% in Uttar Pradesh to 26.4% in Goa, and I see the PI, Dr. Ankush Desai also on this call. So yes, so you see this wide heterogeneity. India is diverse in everything, so naturally even the diabetes prevalence has huge heterogeneity. There's one thing I also want to say before I go on to the pre-diabetes. So there always are lots of questions about the time frame that we have done the study in. Any epi study is generally reported within 5 years or so. But here in the 15-year period, you may ask, how can all the states be comparable? Now for this particular problem, we've had to go to statisticians, and we have actually moved all the states to one time point, that is the year 2021, using the NFHS5 demographics as the base population. All of the adjusted prevalences and weighted prevalences have been added to this population. So every number for every state that you see is the current reported prevalence, both urban and rural, for the state, and they are comparable across India. So that is diabetes. Now let's move on to pre-diabetes. Pre-diabetes prevalence is 15%, it's higher than the diabetes prevalence, but of note here is that there are almost no urban as well as rural differences. And this is of particular importance because, as we know, if you get pre-diabetes, then the conversion to diabetes is very, very fast. And in our population, a good number, more than 60% of individuals in the pre-diabetic state then end up having diabetes very soon, within a 5-year period. So if you see increases in rural pre-diabetes, what that means is that rural India is going to have a lot of diabetes in the upcoming years. And why that's even more significant is that 70% of India lives in her villages. So even a 0.5% or 1% increase turns out into an absolute number, burden, that is a catastrophic number if all of these people start converting. So pre-diabetes, if you notice carefully, it is the opposite of the diabetes. So where diabetes was high, pre-diabetes is low. What does that mean? People who had to convert have already converted. And where diabetes was low, do you remember the greens in the center here? So where diabetes was low, pre-diabetes is high. What does that mean? All these people are yet to convert, yet to get diabetes. So it's like a ticking time bomb here, where we have people ready to convert. So all those low prevalence states, if we repeat 5 years from now, we may have seen that everybody has converted. So this is the pre-diabetes prevalence of the country. Let's move on to obesity. This is generalized obesity as measured by a BMI. So here you have an overall prevalence of 28.6%, almost 40% prevalence, 40% prevalence in urban India. This is obesity, and 23% in rural parts of the country. But what is even more important in our country is abdominal obesity, because we know that Asian Indians have the Asian Indian phenotype, which involves, so they may have a normal BMI, but they have increased abdominal fat as measured by a waist circumference, and thus we are able to report on abdominal obesity. So as you can see, this number is even higher. So in urban areas, 1 in 2 people in urban India is obese. And now again, obesity is a pre-runner to diabetes. More obesity, more pre-diabetes, more diabetes. So that's on the causal pathway. So you have there, and 33% rural, over 40% of abdominal obesity overall. Hypertension. So we have 35.5% hypertension, urban India is 40.7% and rural is 33%. Hypercholesterolemia, which is high blood cholesterol, it's 24% overall. Again, urban and rural, there's not too much difference, 27% and 22% rural. So these are the various metabolic NCDs and their prevalences across urban as well as rural parts of the country. Now this then turns into these estimated numbers of projected burden for the country. So we have earlier reported numbers in 2021 from the International Diabetes Federation Atlas was 74 million people with diabetes, but today the new numbers are a whopping 101.3 million people with diabetes in the country. Pre-diabetes is higher at 136, so this is going to feed into this, and this number is continuing to grow. Hypertension is over 300 million, 35% prevalence, 300 million people. Obesity is also reaching about 250-300 million people, and hypercholesterolemia is also at 200 million. So this is to say that our numbers are continuously increasing. And why are we doing this? I've shown you the total numbers for the country as a whole, but we do have each of these state by state by state by state. And I think the story that we are telling today is that it's okay to show the increased numbers, but now it is time for governments to take notice that there is a problem and do something about this. Luckily, all interventions for all of these metabolic NCDs are similar. So trying to make state-specific interventions is the need of the hour in every state to prevent these numbers from further increasing and increasing the health burden of this country. So I'd like to summarize by saying that we now have robust estimates of all metabolic NCDs. There's an enormous burden. We have huge numbers increasing steadily over the last few years. There are also interstate and interregional variations. Urban areas have higher rates, but rural areas are catching up all over the country. These have multiple implications for planning policy and provisioning of healthcare in the country. Thank you very much.
So that brings us actually to the end of the formal presentation, but I know that we have so many press and media here. Before one-to-one interactions when you'd like to hear something more, we are now opening the floor for discussion. We'll probably start with people in the room, and then I know that a lot of people who are on the Zoom call also. So if people want to ask, you can unmute and ask, but let's start here. India Sandehangal irundha, you can ask. Any question you can. Right, back, okay. No, sir. We call it as the rule of 1/3, which means 1/3 will convert definitely, 1/3 will stay as pre-diabetes, and pre-diabetes, even if it stays as pre-diabetes, the risk for heart disease and strokes and all that are almost same as diabetes. So 2/3 will remain like that. 1/3 can convert back to normal. These are the people who didn't have family history. Maybe they had little obesity, then they started exercising, jogging, and then they became normal. So about 1/3 can become normal also. But the point about pre-diabetes is, if you take 100 pre-diabetics in India and 100 pre-diabetics in say Europe, or white person in Europe or in US, the rate of the conversion is much more in Indians, South Asians. So Indian, Pakistani, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, this particular group of South Asians, we have the fastest conversion because we seem to be losing beta cell function very fast. Or pancreatic insulin reserve seems to be running, probably because we eat too much of carbohydrate and rice, and that's a different issue, but for some reason we are more prone. So having a lot of pre-diabetes, more pre-diabetics than diabetes, 136 million, even if 1/3 of them convert, okay, another 30-40 million, we'll go to 150 million people with diabetes in our country. We cannot do that. So the study is not to create an alarming situation in the country and say frighten everybody, but to say that so much can be done. If you've got diabetes, you can prevent complications with proper treatment. If you've got pre-diabetes, try to convert to normal. Don't progress to diabetes. That is the whole idea behind this. Because the numbers are growing very fast. If we wait too long, saying that very rightly, I think Dr. Nikhil Tandon also said, Dr. Shashank Joshi also said, that communicable disease will always be there. If we say let us wipe out malaria, then we'll talk about this. Let us wipe out TB. By the time it will become 200 million. It will become, suppose even 1/4 of them develop kidney disease. Let's say we have 100 million people. 1/4 develop kidney problem needing transplant or something. 25 million people, 25 million kidneys you are going to go, you can't get 5,000 kidneys. Where are you going to give 25 million kidney? So you just cannot. 25 million dialysis units. It is impossible. If you think about it, we'll never be able to satisfy the proper treatment and give it to our people. That is the reason why prevention becomes very important. Okay? The back, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
Someone was
Somebody next will come to you. Next, yes. How do you prevent pre-diabetes from going to diabetes? Actually, we have got data from INDIAB itself for that. What we have shown is, இப்போ நம்ம நாட்டில் வந்து 65% to 70% carbohydrate எடுத்துக்கிறோம், மாவு சத்து. If that can be brought down by just 10%, and if you can increase protein, plant protein by 10%, that 10% you replace. You take more Bengal gram, green gram, black gram, plant-based protein and cut down the amount of rice or wheat that we take. That itself is enough to prevent diabetes. Only INDIAB study we published 3 months ago, okay, or 6 months ago. So it is not very difficult. If we change, and we don't need a dietitian in every village to talk to every diabetic patient. If we are able to, through social media and through media, it's your role as media. If you say we are eating too much carbs, you cut down the carbs. For a plate don't fill all your plate with rice and sambar, rice and rasam, rice and curd, rice and this. You take vegetables half. Quarter plate you take protein, non-veg protein, vegetable protein, water. Upon quarter plate matram you take 1 chapati, little bit of rice. And the many saaptingana, pre-diabetes can become normal, complete normal. Do you have evidence for that? Yes, we have evidence for that. So it's so simple. Plus you must do exercise. Upon yoga, pranayama, if you reduce your stress also, you can definitely prevent. So it's not as difficult as we think. Only thing is, people must do it in a sustained manner. No use. You must continuously do it. Yes, we heard somebody here asking whether I can ask a question.
NCDs at the rate that we are
seeing. Can you just introduce yourself, madam? That you know who I'm talking to. Can you introduce yourself?
I am Sumi from the print.
From the print. Okay. So thank you, Sumi, for that question. So the first thing is to disseminate this information, which I think ICMR has done very effectively in the past, even when you finish the 15 states, and I'm sure there will be dissemination workshops. So of course it's good to present the whole country's thing, but then each state will say, Rajasthan will say, give me Rajasthan data, Maharashtra will say, give me Maharashtra data. We have it. So each state's data, we will give it to that particular government, to the health secretary, to the concerned people, the health minister and everyone else concerned that state. And then that state can say, okay, we have so many people with diabetes, so many people pre-diabetes, how do we carry this forward? So that is the whole aim behind this particular exercise. We are already doing it, and then we'll continue to do it through that. The second part of the question was? Yeah, so how do you, did I answer your question?
I wanted to understand short-term and
short-term and long-term
measures.
Yeah. So the short-term measure is that we have so many people with diabetes. So forget about those with pre-diabetes who in 5 years are going to get diabetes. What are we going to do with those with diabetes? So in the short term, actually, what we have done in the study, again something very unique we have done. ICMR insisted on this, and we thank all the expert committee members. We didn't just diagnose them diabetes and say, okay, you got diabetes, go away. We gave them a health card. We told them about diet. We told them about exercise. We took them to the nearest center, government center, where treatment can be given, and introduced them. We informed the district officer of that place saying that we have detected so many new diabetics. These are the people, please look after them. We had informed consent and all that to do that. So we have done our bit then. But this is a lifelong process, isn't it? ICMR-INDIAB will be over and but you have to look after yourself. So what we have done is to create awareness, and that is a short term. In the long term comes how to prevent, how to provide services. If this is really going to go up and really dialysis units are needed, how do we reach that? How do we screen the eyes of everybody so that we prevent retinopathy from getting into blindness? So if we cannot create a diabetes-free India. We cannot. Because when you grow older, you will get diabetes. So that we cannot prevent. What you can prevent is a diabetes complications-free India. So nobody in India should go blind. Nobody in India should have a renal failure. Nobody in India should have a foot amputated or any other part amputated due to diabetes. And due to diabetes, you should not get a heart attack. Okay? Due to smoking, other things you may get. But due to diabetes, you should not get. If you are able to ensure that, and if INDIAB can produce enough noise to say that you have a risk of doing this, and by simple things, you don't have to go through bypass surgery, CT scan, you don't need to do anything. Simple diet, exercise, take your medicines, go and meet the doctor. That's it. Today, through Ayushman Bharat scheme and all the wellness centers which are being set up both by the state government as well as the central government, we are going to have 150,000 wellness centers. So those are the places where they will be treated free of cost. Free medicines are going to be given, free checkup is going to be given. The government has already got into that. We have to reinforce all that and see that it happens. So some patients when they go for, or some individuals when they go for a test to a lab, the fasting shows 150 and the post glucose 2 hours, or post prandial shows 120. How is it even possible when you've eaten food, how it can go up? Now we are assuming, so both it's possible. I'll tell you how it's possible. When you take food, we are assuming only the peak will be reached. For some people in 40 minutes itself it will go up. So if you keep testing at half an hour, 1 hour, 1.5 hours, so you will find suddenly one peak going and then it's coming down. Now on the lab time we are taking a particular time and thinking that is when the peak has occurred. We have missed the peak. Peak has already gone up, then it's coming down, then we are going catching. So to us we think after eating it has gone down. No, after eating it didn't go down. After eating it went up, you didn't catch that point. You missed that. Then when it's come down, insulin has come from the body, brought it down, then you have caught it. Okay? So it is possible. But real or bad, there is no insulin to come from your body, you are a severe diabetic. Then 150 will become 300 after eating. Okay? Yes, sir.
There is a double in diabetes. Urban prevalence is double of rural. But if you look overall in various places, what's really alarming is that rural prevalence is growing at a faster rate than urban prevalence, and this is evidenced by the pre-diabetes numbers, where rural has actually caught up with the urban prevalence. So that it does appear to be an important point. I think the main thing that we need of the press and media is a call to action from governments. Every state government needs to know what the problem is and what are we doing about it. I think that is the whole point, that we need noise around saying, we need the voice of the press to say, we need more dietitians, we need more areas for physical activity, we need healthy food, we need education, we need to do something about this. And it's not enough if we doctors stand and shout here, it's not enough. We need the public hearing. We want people to say, give us solutions. We want the voice of the people to hear that there is a problem, so that there can be a solution, at least for the generations to come.
I would even add that government's reach and nobody can match. But it's a society's response. It's not just government alone. Individual also has to take responsibility. The family has to take responsibility. The society has to take responsibility. NGOs. There are lots of hundreds and thousands of NGOs in this country. Why can't they all? We have how many Lions clubs in this country? How many Rotary clubs in this country? How many organizations? It should be a joint effort of everyone saying that we will serve healthy food. We will increase in our corporate area, we will increase physical activity. It's a joint effort. Government cannot do everything. Government can do more in rural area maybe. But in urban areas, there are so many other stakeholders. I would say all the stakeholders come together and say, look at this. Last year, 2 years back, 72 million. Suddenly it's gone to 100 million. We don't want this to become 200 million in some time. In another 5 years' time, we missed the bus. The period is already converted. What can we do to do that? So I think it's very simple. The solutions are very simple. It's not like, unlike cancer, you have to do MRI, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do biopsy, you have to do 10 treatments, you have to give chemotherapy, you have to give. It's very complicated, isn't it? If you think about it. Diabetes is very simple. But because it is so simple, nobody takes it seriously. When you're diabetes and sugar, that's all. No, it's not just a touch of diabetes. If it starts affecting your systems, it can be very serious.
Sir, do you have any data? COVID pandemic played any?
Yeah, so we do. I'm glad somebody else also asked about COVID. There is no doubt that during COVID, diabetes rates went up for several reasons. First of all, you start with the lockdown. Okay, everybody confined to the house. Stress level, this level, that level, obesity level, eating wrong food, watching sitting time more, everybody working from office, not even the extra. So that's very. Second one is that steroids were shown to be life-saving. The first few waves that we had, people are dying, and when they gave steroids, their life was saved. So excess steroids were used. Everybody was pumped with steroids, and that produced a lot of diabetes. Now the question is, when you withdraw that steroid, does the diabetes go away or not? A lot of people it went away. In some people it just triggered it, and after just waiting for a trigger, like a bomb to be set up, and then after that it never came back to normal. So that is second one. Third one, which we really haven't answered, we are part of an international group trying to answer that. Does COVID go and directly damage the pancreas, kill all the cells and produce it? The opinion is divided. We don't have enough evidence. So yes, COVID is definitely one of the factors to have increased. But this increase that we are saying, I showed you 2008 before also it is going up. Isn't it? So it's not, COVID is only 2 years. What about the rest of them? Many of the states have studied long before COVID. So it is not just COVID alone producing this. COVID could have been an indirect factor, and we are trying to study how much COVID in subsequent publications we will show that.
But we didn't see 40% increase in previous, only this time. In 3 years we are seeing a 40% increase. So do you think COVID could have played a role?
No, this is actually not 3 years, because the last publication in 2007. So it's like, yeah.
From 70 million?
So 2017, not 7. 2017, not 7. Correct. 2017, about 6 years.
Yeah. But then 6 years, 40% increase, we didn't see it last time. From the earlier study.
It's about, but if you go back if you look at the IDF calculation, leave us, okay, take IDF. IDF's figures, and we have Dr. Shashank Joshi, who is representing the IDF Southeast Asia, and Dr. Panchi Sabo and all that here. Now, if you look at the IDF figures, 2000, 2005, 2000, we are only 20 million in India. Then it became 30, then it became 40, 50, then it jumped to 70. So when it jumped to 70, it was a huge jump. Now we are saying 70 to 100 is jumping, and over a period of, from the last data, now that 70 also, IDF, why they made it 70 million, we felt it was very low at that time. It is based on INDIAB data only. Now INDIAB at that time, when we published 15 states, we had about 6-7 states from the northeast, which had very, half of it was northeast. Northeast had the lowest prevalence. So based on that, this is your data, they said. Now we have got Kerala, Puducherry, Goa, this, that, all the states which are high number. Now we have got the whole country. So this is the true number for it. The 70 million was a bit of a low number. Because at that time they said China had 140. Okay, so how can India have 70 and China 140? So we felt it was low, but today we know it's more than 100.
So we can't really call it as a 40% jump from the previous.
Yeah, because 40% from when is a question.
It is a jump.
It is a jump.
40 or 30, maybe.
And it's not 40 in every state. It's 40 in some states. See, it's like the answer to the question you asked earlier, pre-diabetes to diabetes. Now suppose Kerala has already reached 25%. I don't expect 40% increase. It's already saturating. See, that's all. It will plateau off after some time, around 30%, 32%, it will stop. That's it. Because everybody in India cannot get diabetes. If you are thin, you have no family history, you are exercising, you will still get diabetes. No, that's not true. So, in the states where it is very low, you can expect huge jumps because the pre-diabetes is so high. They will convert very fast.
Even more than 40 in some.
Yeah. In the states where the prevalence has gone very high, diabetes, pre-diabetes is not so high. Already they have converted. So we are not going to see huge increases. 5 years from now, if we do the same study, you won't find Kerala going from 20 to 80% around. Cannot happen. They are already reaching a plateau. Okay, expecting things to go up, and in some of the states where we thought that, for example, Sikkim, we would like to study Sikkim very well. In Sikkim, both diabetes is high and pre-diabetes is also very high, and their pre-diabetes rate is 31%. It's a very small state, it's a very rich state. So there are some surprising findings like that. And there are some states where the diabetes prevalence is very low, extremely low. Okay, so why is it? Is it being protected, or is it because they are thin that they are getting? So ICMR-INDIAB study has thrown up so many new questions to be asked. We can take the highest state, lowest state, find out what is the difference between the two. That will help us to learn a lot. This is only a kind of baseline, cross-sectional, whole country, kind of one picture we are showing you, in a snapshot we are showing you the whole, like a dashboard, we are showing you the whole thing. Now we can go deeper into each of these and do more research, which is what I think next 10 years, 15 years, if I am still alive, we will be doing that.
What are the recommendations for the study for future research or interventions to address the growing burden of diabetes? I think we can address that.
Yeah, I think so. What it's saying is that we have to strengthen lifestyle, basically. So eat less carbs, take more protein. Some of those already come. Then physical activity. For example, there are people like Dr. Anup Mishra who have given very clear guidelines on exercise. See, a normal, WHO will say 30 minutes is enough for walking. I don't think that's enough, because our tendency to get diabetes is so high. You just walk slowly for 30 minutes, you're not going to prevent diabetes. We need to work even harder as Indians. Put in 45 minutes, 1 hour, brisk walk. Only then we can reach what the white man will do in 30 minutes. Because our tendency to diabetes is so high. Maybe our diet, genetics, all is different. So all these come out from these studies that we have got a lot of work to do.
Jyoti from business line.
No, Hindu business line. Yes, Jyoti. Jyoti.
Here's a question. Dr. Anna states diabetes is in transition in the country. Could you explain the increase in rural area? Is it more testing or more prevalent? So hello Jyoti. Yes, so though more testing is definitely happening, that is not the reason. In an epidemiological study, the increase in prevalence is not related to more testing, because it is a fixed sample done in a particular way, in the same way at multiple points or a single point in time. So the increase in prevalence can be related to the increase in BMI, obesity rates in the rural area. There's also a lot of mechanization and urbanization, change in habits and foods and things that we can support with this increasing prevalence of diabetes in rural areas.
Another point which I'd like to add is there's a lot of thing on social media saying that every 2 years diabetologists and WHO lowers the rate of the diagnostic cut point. So you're just creating diabetes. Last 25 years, no change has occurred. We are all part of the WHO. Dr. Nikhil Tannen is here, Dr. Shankash is here, and we are all part of these committees which are there. Last 20-25 years, not 1 milligram change has occurred in diabetes or pre-diabetes anywhere. And we are using the same methods for the last 15 years in our country. Only thing you can ask is, can you compare Tamil Nadu done 10 years ago with Kerala done now? You can't. And that is why we have adjusted for that. We have adjusted for that. And let me tell you the good news. We are now doing a resurvey. We don't have the results yet, but we are doing a resurvey of 2 states which had the lowest prevalence, Arunachal Pradesh, and highest prevalence, Tamil Nadu, in the first round which we did. Now when we did this study, and that's still going on, it's not finished. So when we did this INDIAB study, we had to project, okay, Tamil Nadu in 2021, how it will be, how much, and so on. When we are actually doing the study, now redoing it, we are finding the same as what we have predicted. That means these are actual figures, if at all slightly lower. There is no exaggeration of any of the numbers.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Sujata.
So I think one of your slides you said UP had lower prevalence of diabetes. My question is, do they do as much testing as people here get done?
So this is not from testing as in a PHC. This is a study. So the number of people in all states is fixed. In different points of time also it's fixed. So the number of testing, unlike COVID and all that, so more people go, so more test. This is not influenced by those factors, because it is a set protocol inside of an epidemiological study. So that's why.
So how many number of people did you test in UP
So
versus number of
it's the same, 4,000 individuals.
So I think the question she's asking is, how can you take 4,000 in Goa and how can you take 4,000 in UP when one has 200 million and one has a very small state? Now this is a very good question, but this is something which is deliberated on a lot by all the population experts, including the Indian Population Institute in Mumbai, who are involved in this. Now, as long as you obtain a representative sample of the state, if your representativeness is good, the number can be the same. It doesn't mean that if UP is having a bigger population, you need to increase the sample size in UP. No need. Okay? From the prevalence rates that you know in the country, we have certain thing which determines the sample size. So what determines sample size? 4,000 per state is enough. So even it's a big state or a small state, the same 4,000 only will use.
Let me add to it. So the sample size comes from prevalence. So you calculate separate prevalence for urban India, you calculate separate prevalence for rural India. That gets collated into one number, and that number is constant for all the states of the country. But now inside of the state, you take population proportionate to size. There's a PPS method of sampling which allows you to populate according to that particular state. So inside of that, you've done that. Then when you poll it, there's something called as weightage analysis. So depending on size of state, size of thing, it gets weighted. The final result that you get will get weighted for that statistically in the analysis. So when you're actually sampling, that is dependent on prevalence, the sample size. But finally when you have it, the size and everything is accounted for in the end number that we are projecting. So they are true differences. I think what we're trying to say is there are true differences. So there is
and also it correlates very well. See, I'll give you one story, then you will understand. When we went to Jharkhand in the first round, like we had Dr. Kandani here. So when we went to Jharkhand, when we started urban Jharkhand was very high. We have all the Tata steel and all the things there. When we went to rural Jharkhand, we were doing PSU by PSU and we didn't find a single case. So we said, we got the report, we get this on, not after a month we get the result, daily we get the result. So we are entering into the data and it's coming 0, 0, 0. So we said something wrong, glucometer wrong or something wrong, go back, change the glucometer, same, 0, 0. Then we went to the doctors there. We said if there is diabetes, the doctors there will see. So we went to rural Jharkhand, met all the doctors there and said, how many cases of diabetes you have treated in the last 1 year? 0. They said, oh, you don't see diabetes? Diabetes? We don't see that. They come for malaria, fever, this, that. They don't come for. Then we looked at the BMI. We said, are we still making a mistake? We looked at the BMI. They were the thinnest of all. They were like 16 BMI. So thin, stick thin they were, So it was actually 0. Finally it came up to 3% or something, but it was very, very low. So there are true different. The whole idea about INDIAB is not to just get one number for India, not that at all. Each state how it is. That is what we wanted to do, and that is beautifully brought out in this. And it very nicely correlates with the socio-economic state, the GDP of the state also. The richer the state, there is more diabetes, no doubt about it.
That is also in the paper.
Yeah.
There's a question about differences. Is diet the key reason?
Could be, but I would say BMI is, or weight, abdominal obesity and BMI is one of the biggest drivers. If you take the BMI of Goa and the BMI of UP, it's very different. Very different. So, and you can do correlation. If the person in UP has the same BMI as Goa, what will happen? If the person in Goa has the same BMI as UP, what will happen? You can do all the statistics. You will find immediately it's beginning to converge. So there are certain things which of course diet plays a role, no doubt. South India being more rice eating, we are definitely seeing slightly higher, but then socioeconomically also it is different. So it's complex, it's not easy.
It's a question about correlations between diabetes and other comorbidities.
So we have data on hypertension, we have data on obesity, we have data on hypercholesterolemia, hypertriglyceridemia, and low.
Okay. அதாவது ஓகே ரெடியா ஓகே ICMR-INDIAB diabetes study, INDIAB ஸ்டடின்னு சொன்ன ஸ்டடி வந்து இன்றைக்கி கம்ப்ளீட் பண்ணி இன்றைக்கி காலையில் வந்து Lancet Diabetes and Endocrinology ஜேர்னலில் இந்தியாவுடைய ஃபுல் NCD ஹெல்த் ரிப்போர்ட்னு சொல்கிறது. அதாவது நீரிழிவு நோய் மாத்திரம் இல்லை, டயபெட்டிஸ் மாத்திரம் இல்லை, இரத்த கொதிப்பு, கொலஸ்ட்ராலு, உடல் பருமன் அதிகமாக இருக்குது, ஒபேசிட்டி, இது எல்லாம் வந்து எவ்வளோ இருக்குது இந்தியாவில், ரூரல் இந்தியாவில் எப்படி இருக்குது, வில்லேஜஸில், சிட்டிஸில் எப்படி இருக்குது, ஸ்டேட் பை ஸ்டேட் எல்லாம் கம்ப்ளீட் பண்ணிவிட்டு இன்றைக்கி தான் அந்த ரிசல்ட்ஸ் வந்து பப்ளிஷ் ஆகிருக்கு. இதிலேருந்து என்ன புரியுதுன்னா, முன்னெல்லாம் வந்து நமக்கு வந்து 7 கோடி மக்கள்னு சொல்லிட்டு இருந்தோம், நீரிழிவு நோய் வந்து 7 கோடி மக்களுக்கு இருக்கும் இந்தியாவில்னு. இன்றைக்கி அது 10 கோடியாக மாறிடுச்சு. ஸோ ஒரு பெரிய ஜம்ப், அது ஆல்மோஸ்ட் 50% இன்க்ரீஸ், 40% இன்க்ரீஸ் ஆகிடுச்சு. ஸோ இது வந்து பல காரணங்கள் இருக்குது அதுக்கு. அதான் சிலவங்க கேட்டாங்க கோவிட்னாலேன்னு சொல்ல முடியாது, கோவிடும் கான்ட்ரிபியூட் பண்ணியிருக்கலாம். பட் இது வந்து உடல் பருமன் அதிகமாகிட்டு போகுது, ஃபிசிக்கல் ஆக்டிவிட்டி கம்மியாயிடுச்சு, எல்லாருமே மெக்கானிக்கல் லைஃப் ஆகிட்டாங்க. ஒரு டிவி போடணுன்னா கூட நம்ம ரிமோட் வச்சு தானே பண்ணுறோம், நம்ம அது வரலாம் கூட நடக்க மாட்டோம். அதேமாரி ஒரு க்ரோசரி ஸ்டோருக்கு போனோம், அதாவது வெஜிடபிள்ஸ் வாங்கினோன்னா நடந்து போக மாட்டோம், சைக்கிளில் போவோம், அதுக்கும் கார் எடுத்துகிட்டு போயிடுவோம். ஸோ இந்த மாதிரி வந்து நம்ம ஃபிசிக்கல் ஆக்டிவிட்டி குறைஞ்சி வந்து, ரெண்டாவது வந்து டென்ஷன் அதிகமாகிட்டே போகுது. நம்ம எஸ்பெஷலி நம்ம யங்ஸ்டர்ஸ்க்கெல்லாம் வந்து அவங்க அமெரிக்கன் டைமிங்க்கு ஒர்க் பண்ணுறாங்க, டாலர்ஸில் பே பண்ணுறதுனால. அப்போ என்ன ஆகுது, ஹோல் நைட் தூங்க வேண்டிய டைமில் அவங்க போய் இது பண்ணுறாங்க இல்லையா, ஒர்க் பண்ணிகிட்ருக்காங்க. இதெல்லாம் காரணங்கள். ஸோ இதெல்லாம் வந்து உடல் பயிற்சி, லைஃப் ஸ்டைல் மாடிஃபிகேஷன் இதெல்லாம் வந்து நம்ம கையில் இருக்குது. நம்ம அது பார்த்துட்டா வந்து இன்னும் அது அதிகமாகவும் நம்ம பார்த்துடலாம். இல்லைன்னா இன்னொரு 5 வருஷம் கழிச்சு பார்த்தா இன்னும் ஏறிடுச்சு, 100 மில்லியன் இருக்கிறது 150 மில்லியன் ஆயிடுச்சுன்னு நம்ம சொல்லக்கூடாது. அதுக்கு தான் இந்த இதில் ப்ரெஸ் கான்ஃபரன்ஸ். ஸ்டடி வச்சு ஃபர்ஸ்ட் ஆல் டிசமினேஷன் வைப்போம். டெல்லியிலேயே டிசமினேஷன் வச்சுட்டு ஹெல்த் செக்ரட்டரிஸ்லாம் கூப்பிடுவோம். இந்த பிஐஸ் எல்லாரும் வந்துட்டு ஹெல்த் செக்ரட்டரி கொடுத்து அந்தந்த ஸ்டேட்னுடைய ரிப்போர்ட் நாங்கள் தனியாக கொடுத்துருவோம். குஜராத்துக்கு இதுக்கு தமிழ்நாடு மாரி இருக்குது. நாங்கள் போய் இங்கே தமிழ்நாட்டில் இங்கே ஹெல்த் செக்ரட்டரி போய் மீட் பண்ணி ஹெல்த் மினிஸ்டர் மீட் பண்ணி நாங்கள் கொடுத்துருவோம். இதுதான் தமிழ்நாடுடைய இது, இனிமேல் நீங்கள் பார்த்துங்க. அவங்க ஆல்ரெடி வருமுன் பார்ப்போம் திட்டம் பலதும் பண்ணிகிட்ருக்காங்க இல்லையா. இந்த நம்பர்ஸ் தெரிஞ்சால் அவங்களுக்கு யூஸ்ஃபுல்லாக இருக்கும். ஓகே.